peak returns as Fern, Stark, and our thousand-year-old mage Frieren continue their journey towards Ende to find Himmel's soul in the afterlife, probably to see if they can still pull him out of the friend zone after all this time. Today we're recapping the entirety of Season 2 of Frieren, Beyond Journey's End. Let's see what shenanigans our trio are up to now. It's been 29 years since the death of Himmel the hero, and Frieren, Fern, and Stark continue traveling north towards Ende, and they realize they're broke AF. Fern points out that they need to find work as soon as they get to the next town. Stark seems a little shocked that Fern is already planning that far ahead, but Fern points out that it's only natural to do so when you're on a long journey. In any case, they reach the Somme marshes, and after Stark's disastrous attempt at fishing, he is shocked to find Frieren being up so early. Frieren pulls out a magic nullifying crystal from a bush nearby and shows it to the group. She reveals to them that besides its anti-magic properties, the chunk they found could fetch a high price and buy them a whole-ass mansion. Plus, it doubles as a flashbang grenade if you pour too much mana into it. In the end, they leave it in the forest since it turns off their magic capabilities, which would be dangerous if a monster attacks them out of nowhere. Foreshadowing. After a bit of walking, Frieren reveals that they'd have to pass by a volcanic area before they could get further up north. You know what that means, boys. We're getting an onsen episode in the near future. Let's freaking go! Then the ground suddenly gives way and swallows them whole, only to drop them into an entire cave system full of, yep, you guessed it, those magic nullifying crystals. Stark tries to attack a chunk of it, but he may as well have just farted into the crystal for all the good it's done. Not long after, in what could only be described as rolling a natural 1 on a luck check, a massive toad-like dragon finds them. See, I told you, foreshadowing. Stark worries about the girls and laments at how all he wants to do is run away in the moment. Frieren, then recalling what Himmel said to Eisen so long ago, just says, "Great, let's run away together then." As they book it from the venomous dragon Toad, Frieren does the flashbang trick to blind it. They manage to escape out of the cave with the exception of Stark's legs, which gave out after all that running. R.I.P. Stark's legs. 07's in the chat, boys. In any case, they arrive in the Great Sand Forest, where Stark gets scolded by Fern again for peeking at them while they were taking a bath. To be fair though, he didn't know they were taking a bath, you know? He just wanted to fish in the river after foraging for wild veggies. He didn't know they were there, Your Honor. My boy is innocent. Anyway, they find an inn along the way and decide to rent out a room for the night, when lo and behold, they see Werbel and his group inside. After thanking Stark for his help with hunting down a Fresser, Werbel reveals that he's on his way to the northern frontier because demons have been rampaging there again. Bro is going to help out with protecting the north against the White Walkers like the Giga Chad that he is. Oh, sorry, wrong show. Anywho, he brings up his request to Stark before they parted ways, and directly asks Fern if he could borrow Stark as a vanguard for 2 to 3 years to help out with a demon extermination in the north. Honestly, should have contacted the Space Marines for this, but sure. Frieren just told Werbel to do whatever you want, but in the end, he fails to convince Stark anyway. Stark and Fern even have a gentle moment on a patio somewhere, where Stark admits that the reason why he joined the group was because Fern inspired him to. And I was sitting there kicking my feet, trying hard not to scream, "Now kiss!" And in the morning, both groups part ways again, and Frieren and the gang continue on the next leg of their journey. In the next village over, another statue cleaning request was given to them, in exchange for a spell to scratch the itchy parts of your back. And honestly, the greatest deal if I've ever seen one, second only to the spell that cleans your clothes. But Stark was shocked to find that they weren't actually polishing a statue of Himmel, but a different guy, the one with the pencil-thin mustache that used to make the ladies wet in the 1930s to 1940s. Apparently, this guy was the hero of the South, one of the heroes that opposed the Demon King in his time, alongside Himmel. This badass mofo defeated 3 of the 7 Sages of Destruction, including the sage who saw 1,000 years into the future, Schlatt the Omniscient. Holy peak, bro is goated for real. And then bro becomes more badass during a flashback when he reveals to Frieren that he can also actually see the future and knows that he won't survive fighting the sage, but still does it anyway.
Because that's what heroes do.
He also informs Frieren of the arrival of Himmel and how she will join him to fight and end the Demon King. Bro wasn't even bitter that he wasn't the hero that ends it all, but has promised that the future will be forged by his hands, even if everyone forgets his contributions to saving the world. Well, we didn't forget, bro, and we never will. 07's to the GOAT, the hero of the South. In the next town over, Frieren begins acting sus, making excuses about not having enough time and money to relax and hang back. Stark and Fern call BS on her until they discover the truth. Your girl is trying to leave before getting cordially invited by the graph of the town, which means the town's nobleman wants them to run an errand. The last time Frieren was in town was with Himmel's group. They got threatened with jail time if they didn't retrieve a sword stolen by a demon. Now the great-grandson, Draf Dak, has once again asked them to take back the sword from a different demon, though he was at least more gracious about it than his great-grandfather. Eventually, they find a broken and burned village, and a person who claims to be a wandering priestess. She says the village was massacred by a demon with a sword, and that she was mourning and burying the dead villagers. But Frieren can smell a scammer from a mile away and forces the priestess to reveal that she is actually the demon they were looking for. They fight, and the demon nearly turns Fern into a shish kebab, but Stark manages to parry her away. One orbital strike from Frieren later, and it was all over. They return the sword to the Graph and get rewarded in return. However, as they leave for the next adventure, they talk about how demons might try and steal away the sword again in the future. Well, that's a problem for another day, as Frieren enjoys her reward, a spell that turns red apples into green ones. Finally, it's the onsen episode, or so we thought. Stark comments that the weather's been getting warmer, and Frieren replies that they are now within the volcanic zone. Everyone gets excited to finally get some hot spring action. They keep walking and eventually arrive at a village, or what used to be a village, until 30 years ago when the hot springs dried up. The adventurers no longer came by, and eventually the place was abandoned. There was only a single cabin left, survived by an old man and his family. But there was a little bit of hope. Old Dude remembers a legend about a secret hot spring at the back of the Etwas Mountains, where they were, and Frieren sort of confirms its existence. But whether it's still there or not is another thing. Stark seems to suddenly remember something and decides he wants to find the hot spring. Frieren and Fern gave him sus looks, but eventually they relented. I mean, who could resist this charming smile? After several days of walking, they come across a marker that tells them they're close to the springs. But Fern notices Frieren's lack of enthusiasm. That's because she remembers how difficult it was to find the hot springs when Himmel and their party previously tried to look for it many years ago. Oh, and did I mention that a Hydra is guarding the way there? Yep, a three-headed Hydra who needs to get all three heads cut off or it will regenerate infinitely. Anyway, they managed to murk it at the cost of Stark running for his life as a decoy the entire time. But after a few more hours of trekking, they finally make it to the secret hot springs of the Etwas Mountains, and it was the size of a foot bath. But Stark explains that the reason why he was so adamant about reaching the springs was because of what his master Eisen said about it, that the effort was very much not worth it at all, but the adventure and the view became one of his most cherished memories. So the trio enjoyed their foot bath together, complete with a stunning view, which they still came to regret after nearly tumbling down the mountain on their way back. Eventually, they get to the fortress city of Heist, which is literally just German for hot. Yeah, the fortress city of Hot. And the feelings are hot, hot, hot as Stark finally asks Fern out on a date. Well, technically, Fern had to tell him outright in a my parents aren't home type of situation, and he was dumb enough to not get it immediately. I was almost ready to punch him through the screen. He's like one of those Reddit posters who say, "Hey, this woman wants me to donate sperm because she wants to have a child with me. I wonder if she's into me." Like, bro, come on! Still, uncertain about Fern's reaction, Stark asks the love guru Frieren about it, but just ends up insulting her a second time by calling her a grandma. Frieren threatens him that if he offends her a third time, she'll go on a 3-day tantrum, the likes of which Himmel the hero trembled to see. Anyway, the love guru walks Stark through everything that Fern would be interested in. Food stalls and snacks? Check. Shops that sell pretty things? Check. Dessert shops and baked sweets? Check. And an open area overlooking a view? Check. Stark comments how Frieren really knows Fern, but she admits that everything she knew about her was actually passed down by Hyder. Stark replies that Frieren is still doing a good job of being her parent by remembering all of it. Acknowledging that Stark does know how to say nice things sometimes, she decides to roll back his offense count by 1, which Stark was sarcastically thankful for. In the evening, it was Fern's turn to ask Frieren for advice. Frieren tells her that she did go on a date once, with Himmel, but the more she described it, the more it became a fetch quest to find a lost cat for a magic shop owner. Fern just tells her to forget it and goes to sleep. Except she doesn't fall asleep. Fern stays awake the whole time, staring out the window at the full moon. Looks like somebody's got the jitters on their upcoming first date. It's date day, and Fern is struggling with the age-old question. What the f*** do I wear? She holds up 2 dresses in front of Frieren to get her opinion, and as usual, she was no help. So she ties Frieren's hair tightly in a braid around her neck as punishment. In the end, she picks the purple floral number and prepares to go out. Meanwhile, Stark is in the same clothes as yesterday. They meet outside, and the most awkward date in the entire world begins. And my boy finally acknowledges that Fern is kawaii. And I don't know if I should be angry that he just realized it now, or if I should congratulate him for finally having eyes. Anyway, they continue on to the marketplace, all while talking about Frieren and her obsession with magical items, and the onsen. Great, our first date convo, and we talk about the old lady we're traveling with. Way to go, Stark. Cue awkward date montage. At one point, Fern looks at a shiny looking pendant, but Stark seems disinterested. They leave the store, but Fern looks back one more time and sees a couple picking out the same thing she was interested in. At the food stall, Fern stumbles and Stark manages to catch her. A bit awkwardly, I might add, but hey, baby steps. Still give Fern the butterflies though. Cue another montage and another round of talking about Frieren and her shenanigans. Still, the view was nice, so it's not all bad. Stark addresses the elephant in the room, that Fern hadn't smiled at all the entire time. Fern replies that it was because she didn't feel like they were in any place that Stark himself would pick. The boy admits that he did ask for Frieren's help because he wanted Fern to be happy. Fern realizes the effort and finally smiles, saying she was indeed still happy about it. In the end, the date went quite well, with both of them reminiscing about their pasts as the day wrapped up. In the evening, Fern joins Frieren in the onsen, and she notices our girl is in a good mood, which leads to her reminiscing about her own date with Himmel. Well, it wasn't so much as a date, more like a fetch quest to find a missing cat. The following day, they finally continue with their journey, and they eventually enter the Nakricht region of the Northern Lands. Specifically the border checkpoint of the Northern Plateau. It's a town with Fort Knox levels of security, and for good reason. Beyond the border lie dangerous monsters and demons, most likely. But after stocking up on supplies, the trio just walks to the gate, shows Fern's first-class mage credentials, and leaves town without much incident. It's amazing what the right piece of paper can do. Anyway, they didn't need to walk far before they got ambushed by a bunch of dinosaurs in the forest, followed by an earth giant, then a five-eyed snake that paralyzes people, then a bat demon creature in a cave. See? I told you it was dangerous. Exhausted, they arrive at a small village. They're taken in by a man and his family, but in return, he asks them to deal with a powerful monster that's been terrorizing the place. They agree. The next day, after getting a long rest, the party heads north to confront the town's BBEG, which turns out to be a big sword-wielding demon. A fight ensues, and they almost get taken out, but Fern manages to distract the demon long enough for Frieren to take out its sword arm. Stark then puts the demon in a chokehold, and Frieren finishes it off. She warns them that there'll be more where that came from in the journey ahead, and Stark asks Frieren why they didn't just take the sea route. Frieren smiles, and remembering what Himmel told her in the past, reminds Stark that people live in the northern plateau too. People who need adventurers like them to make their lives just a little bit easier, even if it means rocking strong-ass demons and monsters along the way. In the Bear region, rumor has it that the dwarf Foss has found the secret stash of the legendary bowshaft, the best liquor ever created, second only to Jägermeister and Johnny Walker. Turns out, Foss has been looking for this stuff for a long time now, and he's finally located the ruins where it was being aged. The catch? The room was sealed with a magic barrier. Foss catches Frieren on her way out of town and begs her to break the seal for him. Apparently, the guy has tried asking for Frieren's help 80 years before, but since defeating the Demon King was top of the checklist at the time, they refused. Foss offers 20 gold coins as payment. Frieren initially refuses, but Fern and Stark, on the other hand, desperate for moolah, accept the deal on her behalf. They spend 3 months deciphering the barrier, and on the eve of breaking it, Frieren reveals that 1. She apparently knows Milliard, the creator of the legend of Bowshaft. 2. She spent her whole life trying to achieve something, only to end up disappointed. So she pranks everyone else. And 3. Bowshaft actually tastes like shit. The carving and the rumor around it? All a sham, created by an elf who was bored out of her mind to troll entire generations. Anyway, the next day, the room is unsealed, and Foss excitedly samples the legendary drink he's been waiting for his whole life, only to realize the multi-level scam that it was. So what does he do? He laughs it off. He takes all of the bowshaft and shares it with everyone else. Let's have the whole town suffer it too. Great! Awful beer, hurrah! But that's not the only disappointing foodstuff that the trio suffers. On their way to the Norm Company's estate, Stark laments how even the bread was as hard as a rock and just as tasteless. In any case, they get to this heavily protected company-owned town, and Frieren gets detained for an outstanding 80-year debt under her name. It turns out, back in the days of the Hero Party, the owner of Norm Company had allowed them to borrow money to support their demon-slaying quest. They were even told that they can pay this debt anytime they drop by again. But the current owners
We don't do that here.
So the original agreement was shot, and now Frieren owns more than 300 Reich gold coins, which are payable through 300 years of servitude in the mines. Frieren gets dragged away by muscle bros, never to be seen again. Or so they thought, because apparently it was a trick that the current owner of the company had employed. In truth, he'd been trying to enlist Frieren's help with saving the entire company. What he needed from Frieren was not her pickaxe, but her magic. In a brilliant display of budget-breaking animation, Frieren map hacks the mines and locates where the silver ores are buried. The Muscle Bros get to hi-hoing like the seven dwarves, and they eventually find a vein of silver ore that the town desperately needed. Location spells are pretty goated. With her job done, Frieren is allowed to leave and meets up with Fern and Stark, both of whom were actually planning to raid the mines that night and break her out of there. Fern was ready to use her her staff, to Zoltrack her way into the mines. But Frieren just goes, sheesh, so quick to escalate, and comments on how they'll be able to eat soft bread from now on. The Norm Company's estate finally found the solution to their problems. Meanwhile, a different village in the north is getting massacred by demons. Villagers and soldiers fight for their lives, but they end up getting overpowered by a demon that seems to be Virgil Sparta's descendant. Mofo thinks he's Zoro the way he was tearing people and buildings to shreds. In any case, Genao and Methode get dispatched by Seri to rescue the village, but by then, it's too late. A bunch of people in varying stages of unaliveness. Buildings that looked like they were carpet bombed in World War II, and a straggler demon who was trying to pass off as a human who survived the attack. After cleaning up the remaining pests, Genao looks for survivors and finds one, barely clinging on to dear life. Genao carries him to the church, talking about memories he had with that person. Turns out, the village was Genao's hometown, and the guy he was carrying was a childhood friend, the son of a local baker. But even before crossing the church's threshold, the dude's subscription to life expired, and Methode didn't even get the chance to work her healing magic. Laying the man down along with the rest of the villagers' bodies, Genao senses an attacker incoming, which turns out to be Frieren, along with Fern and Stark. Apparently, they also received a request for help to save the village, but was about a mountain away from it. After a brief discussion about what happened to the place, the team started to piece together what had happened, and to save us some time, here's a TLDR. 1. The demons that Genao and Methode saw when they arrived were apparently stragglers and not the main boss, meaning the leader of the pack is still alive somewhere. Number 2. The demons didn't attack the villagers for food because they left the bodies behind, which means whoever attacked the village did it for sport. 3. Demon Boss was apparently strong enough to defeat elite soldiers from the Norm Company who were stationed in the village. And 4. After analyzing the slashes on the bodies and the buildings, Methode and Stark came to the conclusion that the main demon who attacked the village is a quadruple wielder, meaning the mofo has 4 arms and wields 4 blades at the same time. Hearing that last part, Genao seemed to remember something. And we get a flashback to a 4-armed, sword-wielding, snake-bodied demon that ya boys seem to be pretty familiar with.